Wait, what's your album?
No.
What are we talking about?
We're talking High and Dry by Def Leppard.
Woo! This is number 6. That's number 6 favorite album of all time.
6.
So Def Leppard, I feel like we've talked about on the podcast before.
We have definitely have. I mean, at least when the new album came out.
Right, but we haven't talked about this album, High and Dry. So give the folks a little bit of background. Just let them know what this is all about.
Yeah, well, Def Leppard is one of the first bands I ever listened to.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, Pyromania was my favorite. But then, digging deeper into their catalog, you realize that High and Dry just rocks so hard.
Yeah, it rips.
I mean, man, 9 out of 10 of these songs just go totally ham.
Yeah.
Don't really like No No No. It's just kind of messy and forgettable. But the other 9 songs back to back to back to back, kick-ass songs, man.
Yeah.
It's really good. This is before Phil Collin showed up. Phil Collin with one single Collin, not Collins.
Yeah, because Collins...
He was from Genesis.
Yeah.
Phil Collin is the other guitar
And
that
Def
showed
Leppard.
up after Pete Willis got fired for being a fucking dumbass.
Damn!
But he wrote some pretty good riffs.
Yeah, this album is... So this is one of the only albums on your list that I've actually listened to all the way through.
Only because I made you.
Only because you made me. Well, because we were driving maybe 45 minutes to Bolingbrook, and I was like, what do we listen to? And he was like, have you heard High and Dry yet? I was like, no. And then he put a gun to my head, and he said, if you don't pull this car over right now and spend 45 minutes actively listening to this out, he didn't do any of that. Well, High and Dry's original creators, I almost messed up and I turned it into a different thing. I meant to say Def Leppard. Def Leppard has always been kind of a band that we both listened to and bonded over in our shared love for music and all that good stuff. And it also helped that it's a band that a lot of parents like. It's a big anyone who grew up in the 80s liked Def Leppard, and Pour Some Sugar on Me ended up being a really big song just in general. It's probably one of the most iconic songs from the 80s.
Yes, but that's the thing is most people think Def Leppard was always just the cheesy ass 80s, pour some sugar on me, but no. Yeah. You go back to this one, and it has a little cheese with Bring On the Heartbreak.
Little cheese.
That was your first single.
Yeah.
Everything else, man, Let It Go, another hit and run, On Through the Night, man,
that's good.
Just so many of these songs just are super just good rocking. It's just good, solid rocking.
They're all very riffy. I think my impression of a lot of songs were obviously I feel like bands, they develop their sound through a lot of experience and a lot of recording and writing albums and playing and stuff. And at least from what I know about the music industry in the 70s and 80s and things like that, to get a record made was a really, really big deal. And until that happened, you had to play a lot, and you had to put in the work on the ground and play a lot of clubs and get your name through a lot of people's word of mouths and stuff like that. Whereas today, it's kind of you get a kid who produces music in their bedroom, and then they get a record deal where they just put out singles for 3 years, and albums aren't a thing anymore. But back then, it was kind of a big deal when you got a single and then that turned into an album or an EP or whatever. But the reason I'm saying all this is because I feel like the sound of Def Leppard definitely changed from this album to Pyromania and, onto Hysteria. And it's very interesting to see the growth and the evolution through all of that. And obviously, the accident that befell Rick Allen.
Yeah, well, that was in Hysteria, so it was way after.
Yeah, obviously that had some sort of impact on the band's overall sound, I think. Just in terms of like, you know, not that the songs got simpler, because that's a whole other thing. But yeah, I definitely feel like Def Leppard wore their influences on their sleeves for most of High and Dry, for me at least. I was reminded a lot of like AC/DC, the way that a lot of songs on that album kind of started with like a minute of riffs, you know, and it was just like building the riff up a lot, which is really cool. And it's like not something that you see a whole lot anymore. Like even in like, you know, prominent rock bands today, there's not a whole lot of emphasis on riffs anymore. Like a lot of emphasis is put onto like groove and subdivisions and the theory of it all, or like the, you know, the feel of it all. But back in the 80s, man, it was just like, this riff fucking hits. We're gonna write a song around this riff. And then the lead singer would be like, yeah, I got a hook for the fucking chorus, you know, let's drop it. And it's very cool. So this, you know, High and Dry that was what, 79? Or was that
81?
81. Very emblematic of the sound that rock bands had in like the 80s, early 80s, late 70s. But, you know, Def Leppard just did it really fucking well. They just hit it real hard. I know this is your episode and I'm doing a lot of talking, but
yeah, well,
I'm just excited that I actually listened to this album.
Yeah.
You know?
Also, Mirror, Mirror, Look Into My Eyes is one of the most underrated Def Leppard songs.
Yeah,
just
I agree.
Throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Also, the first album, also super underrated.
Yeah. Is that On Through the Night?
On Through the Night, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's another one that just like is like totally forgotten about, but it shouldn't be, because that one also tears ass.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people nowadays, they think about rock bands and there are so many rock bands that have such quintessential first albums, and Def Leppard is never talked about. Never, ever. Everyone always talks about The Police. Everyone always talks about like Black Sabbath. Everyone always talks about even like, I mean, what are some other...
Or like the Cars had a really big... Boston.
Yeah.
Their only goddamn good album was the first one.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, it's a shame that nobody talks about those first two albums, because at the time it was less about, you know, how good the first album was musically and more about like, are there any singles on that? Are there any hits on that are going to get a lot of radio play? And for Def Leppard, that wasn't really the case until Bringing On the Heartbreak. But even then, you know, they didn't have a big, huge, like notable hit until Photograph, I think.
Yeah.
So if you're a Def Leppard fan or you're a 80s rock fan and you haven't heard High and Dry,
listen to that shit, man.
You gotta
I'm telling you.
Put that shit on, dude.
I'm an expert in these matters.
Yeah. Check out David's channel where he talks more about did you do a Def Leppard discography?
I did.
Yeah. Check out his Def Leppard discography video, because yeah, man, he's not kidding. He's an expert. He does this shit all day.
All day.
All day.
Well, I guess I used to, but not so much anymore.